It happens at almost exactly the same time every day. It is a little after 3 in the afternoon, and something inside you begins to shut down. Your eyes get heavy. The words on the screen start to blur. A thick, warm fog rolls over your brain, and suddenly, the simplest task feels like wading through mud. You reach for coffee or sugar, or you just push through it, telling yourself you ate too much at lunch. But the real reason you crash at 3 has almost nothing to do with your lunch. Because this slump was scheduled. Long before you sat down at that desk. Long before there were desks at all. Your body has an appointment every afternoon, and it has been keeping it for a very, very long time. The tiredness you feel is not a glitch in your day. It is a clock inside you doing exactly what it was built to do. Let me show you what is really happening. You like to think you get tired simply because you have been awake and busy. Use energy, feel drained, refuel, repeat. It feels obvious. It also happens to be wrong. Your alertness is not a fuel tank that slowly empties. It is controlled by two separate systems running at the same time. And once you understand them, the 3 o'clock crash stops being a mystery. The first system is exactly what you would expect. From the moment you wake up, a chemical called adenosine begins to build in your brain. The longer you stay awake, the more it accumulates, and the sleepier you feel. Think of it as pressure filling a tank. By late at night, the tank is full, and you finally sleep, which drains it back down. Scientists call this sleep pressure, and it rises steadily, hour after hour, all day long. But here is the problem. If sleep pressure only rose in a straight line, you would feel a little sleepier every single hour, worst, right before bed. You would not feel fine at 5 and wrecked at 3. So something else must be happening. Something that dips in the middle of the day and then lifts again. That something is your second clock. And it is the one almost nobody knows about. Deep in your brain sits a tiny cluster of cells that acts as a master timekeeper. It runs a roughly 24-hour cycle called your circadian rhythm, and it controls far more than when you sleep. It sets the rise and fall of your hormones, your digestion, your body temperature, and crucially, your alertness. It does not care how long you have been awake. It runs on its own schedule, like a second hand sweeping around a dial you cannot see. The scientist who first cracked open this hidden world was Nathaniel Kleitman, often called the father of modern sleep research. In the 1930s, he did something extraordinary. He took himself deep into a cave, cut off from sunlight and clocks, and tracked his own body over weeks. What he found was that the rhythms of the human body did not need the outside world to keep time. They were internal, built in. Your body was keeping its own hours whether you liked it or not. And that internal clock does something strange in the early afternoon. It dips. Your circadian rhythm is not a smooth hill that rises in the morning and falls at night. It has a distinct trough built into the middle of the day, a scheduled window where your alertness naturally drops and your body quietly pulls you toward rest. It lines up almost perfectly with that heavy, foggy feeling you get after lunch. Not because of the food, because of the clock. So now, picture the two systems together. Your sleep pressure has been climbing all day, filling the tank. And right in the early afternoon, your circadian clock hits its low point and stops holding you up. For a couple of hours, both systems point the same direction, down. That overlap is your 3 o'clock crash. Two invisible forces, briefly aligned, pulling you towards sleep. This idea, that your alertness is the sum of two separate processes, was mapped out by a researcher named Alexander Borbély, whose two-process model became one of the foundations of modern sleep science. Once you see it, the daily crash is no longer random. It is arithmetic. But maybe you are still not convinced. Maybe you are sure it really is the lunch. So let me tell you what happens when scientists take the lunch away. In controlled studies, researchers have had people skip lunch entirely, or eat only a tiny meal, and then measured their alertness through the afternoon. The dip still comes. People who ate nothing at all still get sleepy at the same time. The famous post-lunch crash shows up even when there was no lunch to blame. The food might deepen it slightly, but it did not cause it. The crash was going to happen regardless, because it was written into your clock, not your stomach. So the real question is not why you crash. The real question is why on earth your body would build in a daily shutdown in the first place. Why would evolution design a brain that dims its own lights every afternoon? To answer that, you have to leave the office and go back tens of thousands of years, out onto the open land where your ancestors actually lived. For most of human history, the early afternoon was the most dangerous time to be active. It was the hottest part of the day. The sun sat high and merciless, and moving around under it meant burning precious water and risking your body overheating, one of the fastest ways for a human to die. Your ancestors did not have air conditioning. They had shade and stillness, and the wisdom to use both. So a body that naturally wound down in the early afternoon was not broken. It was brilliant. It pulled your ancestors into the shade, told them to rest during the deadly heat, and saved their energy and their water for the cooler, safer hours of morning and evening, when hunting and gathering actually paid off. The afternoon dip was a survival strategy. It kept them alive, and you can still see the fingerprints of that ancient rhythm all over the world today. Across the Mediterranean, in Latin America, in parts of Africa and Asia, cultures independently built their entire days around it. The famous siesta is not laziness. It is a civilization listening to the exact same biological signal you feel at your desk, and instead of fighting it, honoring it. They eat, they rest through the peak heat, and they come alive again in the evening. They are working with the clock. You are working against it. Because here is the mismatch at the heart of your bad afternoons. Your body still runs on the ancient schedule, but your world does not. Your ancestors could lie down in the shade when the clock told them to. You have a meeting at 3:15. The dip arrives exactly on time, an instinct millions of years old, and it slams straight into a calendar that has no room for it. You are not failing to stay alert. You are being asked to override a survival mechanism with a spreadsheet. So what do you actually do about it? This is where knowing the science changes everything, because most of what you do to fight the crash makes it worse. Take coffee. When you feel the fog roll in at 3, you reach for caffeine. But caffeine works by blocking the adenosine, that sleep pressure chemical, from being felt. It does not remove the pressure, it just hides it. And drink it too late in the afternoon, and it lingers for hours, quietly sabotaging the deep sleep you need that night, which leaves you more tired tomorrow, which makes tomorrow's crash even worse. You are borrowing alertness from your future self at a brutal interest rate. Now compare that to what the science actually suggests. Researchers like Sarah Mednick, who has spent years studying naps, have shown that a short rest of around 20 minutes, taken right in that afternoon window, can restore alertness far more cleanly than caffeine. You are not fighting the dip. You are briefly giving into it, exactly as your ancestors did, and letting it pass. The very thing your calendar calls a waste of time is the thing your biology has been asking for all along. Even without a nap, the fixes make sense once you understand the clock. Morning sunlight anchors your rhythm and sharpens the whole cycle. A short walk in the early afternoon works with your body instead of drugging it. And simply knowing the dip is temporary, that your alertness will naturally climb again in a couple of hours, takes away its power to make you feel like something is wrong with you. Because nothing is wrong with you. That is the part worth holding on to. The heaviness you feel at 3 is not weakness. It is not a lack of discipline. And it is not the sandwich you ate an hour ago. It is a message from a body that spent millions of years learning exactly when to push and exactly when to rest. It is trying to protect you from a danger that no longer exists, using a rhythm that predates every clock you own. You have simply been taught to be ashamed of it, to caffeinate over it, to power through the one moment in your day when your oldest instincts are quietly begging you to pause. It happens at almost exactly the same time every day. A little after 3, something inside you begins to shut down. But now you know it is not shutting down at all. It is keeping an appointment older than offices, older than cities, older than farming itself, waiting patiently for you to finally understand that the crash was never the problem. It was the answer.